He's got choir practice tonight.
Lovely.
Yep.
Lovely.
Dress rehearsal.
Oh,
It's
boy,
important.
wow.
Yeah.
Maureen, I guess we'll do a little intro thing as when we start up here. We sort of went through and met everybody as they came in, but we'll do it again. Help yourselves to water. There's water over there on the desk. If anybody wants one.
Does anyone else need an agenda?
Hey, Jack.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jack.
Check.
It's like a choir practice. Gary.
Sorry, David.
Gary.
Oh, very nice. Anyway, she's trying cookies.
Yeah,
She made cookies.
I know. So. Didn't plan it very well. Okay, so how are we doing on space? Has everybody got a seat?
Yeah, we'll just, Aaron can just move on.
Okay, you're happy with that? Great turnout, eh? Just put their whole board.
Yeah, we have two board members who don't live here. Tim-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tim and Marla.
Yeah.
And Tim was trying to come. He couldn't.
Yeah.
Marla is kind of a board member on the condition she doesn't have to come to meetings.
Yeah.
But she runs Whistler Hazard, so she's
Oh,
really good to have.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, really good to have. Different kind of context, but you know what, it's all the same basically. Eh? Variations on a theme. All right, where'd she go?
Agenda?
Agenda's everybody going? All right. You all ready to go, Seth? Okay. I have to call this meeting to order of the Mayor Standing Committee on the Community Lands. I'd like to welcome all the BIRCH contingent that's here, and I think what we'll quickly do, another one? Yeah, public, more public, is let's just have a quick go around at the table here and just, if you want to just give a little bit of background about, you know, who you are, what you're doing, why you're here. Start, David. Awesome.
I'm David McCullum, I chair the BIRCH board.
I'm Dennis Wilson, and I'm on the committee and on the APC.
Okay, and what's your area of expertise, Dennis?
Oh, town planning and urban design.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
I'm Tom Swan. I've been on Bowen since 1976. My career was in real estate. I'm now with the Nature Conservancy of Canada as the Director of Strategic Initiatives. So real estate is what I've done.
I'm David Hawking, and I'm on Municipal Council, and also on the APC.
I'm Lorraine Nicholson. I'm a second-term councillor, and I'm on the Housing Advisory Committee and also the Economic Development Committee, Community Economic Development.
All right, Jack, we're just doing sort of introductions, just a brief over.
I'm Jack Rousseau, and I came just in time.
You did. You did indeed.
I'm living on Bowen for 4 years now with Belterra.
Yeah,
and
nice.
I'm on the board of directors.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm Adam Loheed. I work in transportation planning now, and prior to that, did strategic planning and regional district level.
Great, thank you.
I'm Anita Blake. I'm on the BIRCH board as well. For many years I was a municipal solicitor, both in-house and privately. And in the last 15 years I've been working in labor relations and human resources.
Oh, great. Awesome.
I'm Robin Fenton. I'm the executive director of BIRCH, and my profession is as an architect. And I have a background in facilitation and community engagement.
Thank you.
And I'm Daniel Martin, I'm the manager of planning and development here.
I'm Rod Scher, I'm the Chief Financial Officer.
Frits de Vries, I'm architect and on the Housing Advisory Committee with Marine and Bowen and others.
Stephanie is short, committee clerk.
Most important person here. And myself, Gary Ender. Yeah, so I guess, let's close these doors, they just feel like we're just, it's like a little bit here. Thank you. I guess just to sort of take a few steps back here, unfortunately, and how we got to where we are now, and where we're gonna go from here. So there was when the new council came in November, there was a sort of reflection on what we were doing with community lands, and there was the fire, where we're gonna put the fire hall and that sort of thing, and there was quite a bit of discussion about monetization, lot 3, which of course had already been gifted to BIRCH and the Health Society. So anyway, we thought we would revisit that, and we went through a little procedure here, and we were gonna so we thought we could put everything on hold for 90 days, and while this new Mayor Standing Committee on the Community Lands got underway, we thought it would be good just to put a pause on everything and reflect back on what we were committed to and what we weren't committed to, and where are we going down the right road before we started over. So we started on the 90 days, and we thought we came up with some pretty good solutions, but they're still ongoing. So anyway, we're back at the table. We have your board here, which is wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And, basically, it's just an open discussion about where we want to go and how we're going to get there. Where this council is 100% in support of BIRCH. There's absolutely no question of that. The issue we have is the lot 3. That's the issue we have, is putting all the housing, BIRCH housing, on lot 3 at this point in time. So we did come up with what we thought was a compromise. We originally had it as a 2-part deal, so that we would indeed have some land on lot 3 for BIRCH, but it would be cut back considerably. And/or we were considering putting them. Sorry, Maureen, go ahead.
Could I just call for approval of the agenda? Just procedurally?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we could, yeah, I guess, okay, we'll do that. Okay, so the approval of the agenda, does anybody have anything to add, or everybody's had a look at it, it's pretty straightforward.
I'll move the agenda.
Thank you. Yes. Second. Thank you. Okay, I'll ask a question, all in favor? Thank you. Approved. Adoption of the minutes, have people had a chance to go through those from the last meeting? Thank you, and a second. All in favor? Thank you. All right, so that's that part of it. Public comments. I guess we didn't technically go through that. Does anybody have anything to say? Come on up. Sure. Yeah. Sorry, we'll try to get you. We'll try to get you a seat here somewhere.
Giving me the time, and I really appreciate it. I feel like it's a really important moment for Bowen, so I felt like imposing on you, so if you forgive me. I wanted to talk about planning the community lands to support a diverse community. I'm going to talk about 3 things: housing on Bowen, the community lands more generally, and a tool I'd like to suggest to you for supporting our goal to ensure a diverse community. Okay, housing on Bowen, and excuse me, I'm always nervous when I'm speaking on council. So the nature of the housing problem on Bowen is clear to us all. Soaring house prices on the mainland have put pressure on house prices here, making them unaffordable for low and middle and upper middle income earners. So I just looked it up today. Apparently, and I don't actually think it's accurate, but the average home price on Bowen is $853,000, which requires a family income of $341,000 per annum. The lowest house price right now is in Belterra, $638,000 for a two-bedroom home. Requires a family income of $255,000 per annum. And the median family income across Metro Vancouver is $76,000 per annum. So from that income, an affordable home would be $190,000, which is obviously, it's less than a third of anything that's available on Bowen. That means that many families are now permanently shut out of the purchase market. Not only that, but skyrocketing rental prices and the precipitous drop in inventory mean that rentals have become rare, expensive, and very insecure. And I have to say that I know of a number of families who are having to move on an almost annual basis, which is obviously very costly, both emotionally, especially for the children, and very costly in money. Moving is expensive. So to meet this crisis, I believe that we need a bank of affordable rental that is available and perhaps reserved for island residents. Suites and townhomes are generally small, and the owners generally prefer no children or pets. Private development isn't going to be able to meet the needs of existing resident first-time buyers, not least because of the high cost of land and construction. This means that our only option is some kind of publicly supported project. So as far as I can see, the BIRCH project is tangible, established, and moving forward. I understand, I may be wrong, that it's poised to apply for grants. So I believe that they need to be supported in every way possible to begin to address, so that we can begin to address this crisis as soon as possible. Because they seem to me to be really the only group that are going to be able to deliver this quickly. And when the project is finished, it will be a significant community asset. It's not, I just want to say this will be a community asset. Okay. Moving on then to community lands in general. Our Bank of Community Lands gives us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to ensure that community needs are accommodated. Private land use is necessarily determined by direct economic value. Community land use is best determined by value to the community, which often has an indirect economic value. Also, our village, Snook Cove, is geographically very tight, which is both a charm and a challenge, which means that it's even more critical to plan it well, because the community land is pretty much the only developable land within the cove. And once that's allocated, it will be near impossible to meet any needs that we haven't yet met. For future community needs are complex, but they're also fairly predictable according to growth. In order to avoid a Tetris situation where piecemeal land allocations make meeting unanticipated needs impossible, I think we need a community needs assessment and a comprehensive planning process to guide decision making, and I really encourage Council to begin such a process as soon as possible. And the last thing I wanted to offer was a tool to ensure that our decision-making supports a diverse and vibrant resident community. Sitting on council means being overworked and underpaid, and that means that a narrow demographic is able to do it, largely for economic reasons. In addition to this inevitable narrowness, community needs are very diverse and complex, and no one could expect to be able to be aware of and understand everything of importance. In order to meet this challenge, some municipalities and other decision-making bodies are employing a gender test, I believe it's called, to examine how a policy or decision will impact women differently to men. I would like to encourage BIM to adopt a diversity test that enables you to examine how well we are meeting our objective of supporting a diverse community. For example, a diversity test for housing could ensure that BIM keeps in mind the needs of families, both nuclear and separated, disability, mental health, income and age. For transportation, diversity would include commuters, those who work on island, youth and seniors, etc. I ask the Council to consider adopting such a test, in particular for planning the use of community lands, and I would encourage such a test for all Council decision making.
Thank you. Just your point on the needs assessment, the province just came out last week with the criteria for the needs assessment and the money. So we've applied, or we're in the process of applying, and we'll get that done as soon as we can.
That's for housing needs though, right?
It's housing needs, that's all it is,
So
yeah.
I was thinking slightly more broadly of a community needs assessment.
Yeah. Great. And we certainly understand the need for the housing. There's no question about that. We just have to figure out how we're going to get there, that's all. Anybody else? Public comment?
This is a board member
Yes,
who's going to
yeah.
join us.
Any other public comments? All right, we'll move on to the business arising from the minutes. And so a review of the committee mandate. Now, we could just, the purpose is, so you've got the Mayor Standing Committee on the community lands, terms of reference and that sort of thing. We could go through that, and this is more for the committee members, and I'm sorry about that. Bear with us as we go through this. Maureen, did you want to do anything specifically on this, or?
I guess I just wanted to underscore the continuity of the mandate of this committee and the last committee. The key difference is the addition of under 2.2 D, development market evaluation process. And that was not a large factor in the discussions in the last Mayor's Standing Committee. We managed to put Area 1, Lot 2 on the market. Who was interested in doing so. But that was the focus in that area. So there has been a stronger interest this time around. I'm not altogether certain where it came from. It may just be that financial circumstances for the municipality are tighter, and also this is much more of a reality than it was under the last council. We're actually genuinely moving forward with the allocation of lands to build a fire hall into BIRCH and to the health centre. So it's getting real, and I think that that's raising some questions for some people.
Yeah.
Gary has spoken about, and others on the committee have spoken about the importance of due diligence, and others on the committee have spoken about the importance of being responsive to community needs, which goes beyond considering the market value of lands.
No, there's no question about that, and it's the community lands are for the community, and for community amenities, they're for civic facilities, and they're not all about making money. But there is definitely a fiscal part of it. And there's certain things that came out of all the studies that have been done on the community lands and that sort of thing. Lot 3, there's absolutely no question, it is the most valuable piece of property, and it was always intended to be left for future use. Well, some now, but a lot of it just to keep it in play. Right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to produce housing, and so we got to get some housing on here. But back to the point I had, Lot 3 is definitely the most valuable piece of property that we have, and there's just and put the fire hall on one end of it. It has to be there. It's the only flat land we have in the municipality, which was a little bit controversial. But also we have to densify the rest of Lot 3. So the health center is in there, and we said, well, you've got to go up. You can't have just a spread out amount of property, and then we got back to BIRCH and that sort of thing. But the mandate of this community lands committee is to evaluate all the pieces of property. Right now we're caught up with BIRCH and the health center, trying to get them on their way. We want to get the housing on its way. And how do we get there? How do we make this happen? Once we get through this part of it and when everybody's on their way, then we're gonna go look at all the different lands and say, you know, what is this good for? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna zone it? How are we gonna subdivide it? And so we get to a place in the future, well, if through a needs assessment or a housing assessment, we say, okay, well, we need some particular kind of housing, whether it's market housing or, you know, worker housing. And then we can just go to a piece of property and say, okay, well, here's this piece of property here. And then we just take and we put an RFP on it. And so developers come in and they say, okay, well, here's our offer, here's what we'll do for you, and we'll get it done. But we're not at that point. We're just scattered all over the community lands, and we have to get to a position where we're in control, and we haven't been in control in the past. Does anybody else want to have anything to add about that, David?
Sure. Yeah, I want to speak a little bit about why I'm keen to be on this committee and what I'm trying to achieve. And there's been a lot of, I think it's sort of the difficult spot we're in has been sort of positioned against housing versus money. That's sort of like a monetization of these lands. And while it's certainly true that this is, of all the lands we have, this is the chunk that's worth the most money, that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in housing and in needs that, and, you know, then the health center came along, and there's also a good argument for having that right in this area of the walkable area of the community. Housing here, because it's walkable, which means it's by nature more affordable, and because this is the core of our community, this will be the core of our community. So my concern about both the health proposal and the BIRCH proposal was not that we have a health center on lot, we shouldn't have a health center, or we shouldn't have BIRCH on lot 3. No, it's great uses. And to have a good organization like BIRCH, I'm so happy that over the years we've struggled with trying to have a nonprofit that's looking into housing. Now we have a good one. But the problem was with the uses that have been put on the land, the entire lot was used up. And I don't feel we can have, to look for the housing that we need, we shouldn't just have one proposal. We need more than one proposal, because this is a big chunk of land and it's an important piece of land. The other thing is, because this land is so valuable, I believe that if we were to put it out to a chunk of it, we piece it up a little bit, so some goes to BIRCH, some goes to the health center, but some goes out to an RFP. Because this land is so valuable, we can put it out with pretty strong demands about what we're looking for. We can ask for the kinds of housing that the private sector could deliver, as well as provide some funds to us through a long-term lease of some sort that would help pay down debt. So that's what I'm looking for. That's why I want to shrink, and as the terms that Gary's been using, densify, both of these other uses. And so that's why we've been having these conversations. How we do that exactly, that's for us all to talk about. But that's what I'm looking for, and this is not all about money. This is about having a couple of housing approaches on this very important piece of land that'll be the core of our community.
Somebody else have any comments, Maureen?
Well, this isn't so much related to the mandate as just to the feedback that was sent to council and to the community after the meeting on the 9th of April. I am hoping that at this meeting we'll be able to get a lot more feedback from all members of the board of BIRCH about what potential options there might be, whether it's a matter of you really are committed to the original proposal on BIRCH and you had a vision, which you clearly did, as to how that might look, or whether you know, if you were limited to that much smaller piece of land, whether essentially an apartment block style project is something that actually would appeal to you. Because I mean, I think one of the things about volunteer groups is that you do it for different reasons than getting paid for it, obviously. So there has to be some kind of satisfaction in realizing a vision and feeling as though you're being respected and trusted and doing something good, you know, for the community. So the sort of pocket neighborhood vision, I think that's accurate to describe it in that way. The pocket neighborhood vision versus the apartment block vision. If one is unacceptable to you and the other isn't acceptable to council, and I must clarify that it's not clear that it isn't acceptable to council, is there somewhere in the middle that might work?
Okay, so let's move on. Just let's get back to the agenda, 4.2, which is the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing discussion, read next steps. I started the preamble, and the reason there was a bit of a preamble is just, I was trying to just set the stage for why we are here today. And like I said, it's so nice to have the Board of BIRCH here, and we'll just, I was just giving some background, and now we'll just carry on with that discussion. And I think it's also sort of important to know that we are just a committee of council, right? So the people that are here on the Mayor Standing Committee will come up with some suggestions. Hopefully we can kind of get something out of this tonight and go forward, and whatever the final decision does rest with the council. So I'm going to start off and say that there's two different thoughts here. What we came up with as a Mayor Standing Committee was this piece of property, which I guess in effect you probably put about 30 units on. Maureen says apartment. I think it could look a little bit nicer than that. But it does produce rental housing. And I think that's what we have to be very clear about is what is the intent? Is it to build rental housing, which is drastically needed on Bowen Island, or a longer range thing of building a community, more of a rental neighborhood, or a pocket neighborhood, whatever, you know, that is a long range thing. But in my mind, that's 20 or 30 years down the road. And that would be another reason why we wouldn't want to tie up all of Lot 3 on one project. Just saying. So, obviously the offer is still there for the piece of property on Lot 3 to BIRCH, if they would like to do a housing unit on there. But I'm also open to looking at other pieces of our community lands. And if you do want to do that neighborhood style rental housing, you know, forever housing, then we could look at another piece of property that you could do at the same time, or, you know, sort of at the same time, or you could choose which one you want to do, or whatever. And then we could give you some more land, and you could actually have some fun with it. What do you think?
Can I ask a question that
Yeah.
is going to appear to be loaded?
Yeah.
And it's not. I genuinely don't understand why a review of Lot 3 hasn't resulted in the fire hall section of Lot 3 becoming small. You're talking about densifying, we're talking about getting the most out of this valuable community resource. There's
Yeah.
going to be a building and an acre of blacktop, or almost, right?
Well, in blacktop,
Well,
what we did do is we moved the building forward to the road.
yeah.
And we left more land at the back, and, you know, who knows what will happen in the future to that land in the back. I don't know. Right now, we need to require it for the fire hall, and, you know, everybody has told us that this is what is a requirement for the fire hall. There's a little bit of excess land, it might be 30 feet at the end right now, but, you know, that unless, you know, that's, I don't think it's gonna change. So we should try to take the fire hall out of the equation and sort of go forward from there. And think about other options.
I still don't understand. It sounds like because,
It's because it's the only place you go.
and it has to be that big.
Yeah. It's 50 years, we're thinking 50 years down the road. At some point in time, the police might be on that property. The ambulance might be in the medical clinic, we don't know, or the health center. So we're leaving access for that around the back of the fire hall too. Yeah, who knows, we're gonna be 50 years from now, but we just don't.
Given the equipment that's gonna go in, the architect actually had done a review of the minimum size building that we could have to house our equipment. And so we're building to accommodate the equipment that we have and trucks that we have, and we're not even putting a second story on right now. It's a provision for expansion in the future.
How much of the footprint of the building, how much of that land is occupied by building?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically the footprint of the building was the minimum size. Yeah, that was one of her goals, was to minimize the footprint of the building.
So then, what we're talking about is what's on the what's off the table is the commitment that the municipality has made. That's either scheduled to be withdrawn or has been withdrawn?
I would say that exact commitment will probably be withdrawn, yeah.
Council's voted on?
No.
No,
Okay.
no, it's still sitting there.
And what's on the table from the committee is the 0.24 or 0.25 or whatever that was in
Yeah.
that. What else is on the table?
Other lands,
What else is on the table?
lot one. Now, Daniel's not gonna like to hear this, but in this piece of property right here, which we could, give you a sizable piece of property on there, which is sort of right across from the school and that sort of thing. It doesn't have sewer. So that's something that would have to be considered on that, but, the cost of hooking up to the sewer and the cost of, the septic system, and that would be about the same. But that, sorry, Maureen.
Just the other issue with Lot 1 is a concern generally about the community lands that we've been criticized for, and concern has been expressed about piecemeal development of the lands. To plop BIRCH into that piece of Lot 1 without having thought about how the rest of that lot is going to work and how it's going to be serviced makes our planner go twitchy.
Yeah.
It just is a kind of frightening prospect to do it in an ad hoc basis, but it is an option.
Yeah, and it's just something that, obviously that we'd have to do some planning on for that lot before, we get invested in it. That's all. Tom?
Can BIRCH provide us with any other options to consider? This committee?
Those were, because we suspected from past conversations that those were the two that would likely be up for discussion. And I think in our previous work, in the last 18 months of working on this project, we pretty much ruled out other areas. Like Lot 2 has challenges and it's pretty tied up with the community center and Bowen Court and all of that stuff, so we've kind of ruled that out. And Area 1 of Lot 2, I understand, is not available, and that's fine, it's a challenge to develop anyway, so we kind of ruled out Lot 2 for a bunch of different reasons. So the focus was Lot 3, which is obviously ideal for what we were hoping to do. And then I think we've honed in on Area 1 of Lot 1. I know there is another area, I can't remember what number it is, next to Belterra.
Well, there's this one here.
Oh, yeah, which one, sorry, Gary, were you pointing at?
Corner lot down here.
The Area 1 of Lot 2?
Area 1 of Lot 2.
Yeah.
But there's also, this is zoned for housing in here too.
Yeah, the really steep
But-
part that's colored red there, yeah,
Well,
that's zoned for housing, yeah,
One little nice part in there.
yeah,
But the road would have to come in.
yeah.
That's the other.
But then Lot 1,
Yeah. Daniel, what would you say if, let's just say BIRCH was interested in Lot 1?
And
And-
do you have any idea of size? You said a sizable piece, like, do you have anything in mind, or should we?
The size you were considering before was one of
Okay.
the things we talked about.
Okay,
Yeah, there's a lot more flexibility on
Yeah.
that site for size.
Okay, just so I had it in mind, sorry to interrupt.
And I have one more question, if I could just
Yeah.
add on, because I'm just trying to go through this thought
Yeah.
process in terms of the proposals that I've seen, and just keep in mind, I'm new to this board, I haven't seen a lot of the history that's gone on here. But your proposal, the document that I saw, I think dated March, was for 20 units, and then it went to 40 units. And so I'm thinking about whether there's any opportunity for phasing here. Like, could it start with a 20 unit first phase, for example, on lot 3? Start with that as a given. And then if there was expansion because of the success of that first phase, because again, I'm concerned about proving the market for this product. I really want to see this project succeed. And I want to make sure that it's going to start at a scale that's going to provide a better assurance that it will proceed with success. So my thinking is putting 40 on the market at once is going to be a real test on the market, and I'm not convinced that it's going to succeed in a timely manner. So my thought would be to look at the option of phasing and do a 20 unit first phase, and then look to maybe, maybe that's when you move to lot 2 for the next part of your construct, and look at maybe doing something in a different
Lot
Oh,
form
two
of
or lot
housing.
one?
Or sorry, lot 1. I'm
Lot
sorry,
one,
lot
yeah.
Yeah, as sort of a different form of your construct. That's just an option. I'm just looking for some ideas here that we can maybe
Yeah, and
talk
that's
about
actually
and just see
something that
where
we've
we could
discussed.
go. Yeah.
We always just started with 20 as kind of a
Yeah.
starting
Yeah.
point, and I think it was a number that was mentioned by BC Housing. And then as I've learned more about the funding opportunities, and as you know, we have a federal election coming up and all sorts of different things
Right.
going on, I think we wanted some flexibility, and that's why we started talking about bigger
Right.
numbers. And I actually do have some preliminary results from our survey. It's
Okay.
not closing for a couple more days, but one of them that I thought was intriguing, where have I got it? Is 100 of we have 273 replies, and of those, 108 individual replies said that they would be actively looking for more suitable housing in the next 5 years. And there was a bunch of different responses to that. Of those 108, 78 identified affordability as a criteria for their next home. So, and they identified secure below market rent was identified by 36 people. So 36 people in the next 5 years will be actively looking for affordable below market rents. And below market ownership, there was 40 people looking. And those numbers might overlap, those may not be mutually exclusive. But we start to see, and this is a percentage of the island that's responded, that there's actively between 36 and 40 people looking for more affordable housing options. So I wanted to leave our options open. We have funding, and I can happily announce we have funding from the Community Foundation of $15,000. We got the grant of $19,000 from Van City Community Foundation. And so we're entering into our feasibility stage, and I know I've explained this before. So once we have a secured site that we have confidence that we will have,
Sure.
we were hoping to have the flexibility to, which is what was great about the past site, to look at 20 units versus 30 units versus 40 units. What pro forma made the most sense? Which funding are we going after? Which is actually going to work for us, better or not? So that's what I was hoping for. So we very much thought about phasing and all those different things, but it's this chicken and egg thing. We don't want to spend all of our funding and time on doing pro formas and then find out that the lot's not going to work and then you've got to redo them. So we need some security on the site, and then we do want to run the pro formas and see what it is. But,
And I think that's what this committee wants to provide you with, some security on this site.
yeah.
So there were concerns expressed specifically about the piece of land on lot 3, that it was especially difficult, I guess, in comparison to other parts of lot 3.
Yeah, especially with the contingency for underground parking being required. That was kind of a deal breaker for that particular.
I don't think there was a requirement.
Wasn't a requirement.
No,
Oh, okay.
it was-
Well, then I
it was a
misunderstood.
discussion about having
Okay.
actually, with a lease, we can work the parking in with a larger parking plan.
Okay,
for
good,
that
sorry.
whole thing. Yeah.
You forgive me if my memory's a little fuzzy of
No
that
worries.
meeting. So
Can we just make sure that that gets in the minutes, that underground parking is not a requirement?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great, thank you.
We suggested that it might be fairly easy to do because of the falling off of the land and that sort of thing. If you're gonna put a big concrete foundation in there, you might as well put some. It was just a suggestion, it was not a requirement.
And to be fair, no site work has been done, so, these were all just ideas to try and
Yeah.
motivate some thought around this, that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. But sorry, Maureen, you were saying that,
Well, I'm just wondering, just trying to build on what Tom is saying, if he's thinking in terms of phasing, and you were thinking in terms of phasing. Would a smaller piece of land on Lot 3, maybe comparable to what's being put forward, maybe a bit bigger, if it were in a different location on Lot 3, would that potentially work for a 20-unit first phase?
Can I offer one clarification about the 20-unit thing? It's always been, we have to start somewhere and we have to work out the numbers. And often people will say, well, how many will be non-market? Well, we don't know. We have to look at what the costs are of building when we're actually doing it and that sort of thing. So 20 was just a grabbing a number thing.
Yeah.
We can't go smaller than 20 because of the economy of scale. But we're not married to 20 necessarily at all.
And on that same note, we're not either.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm just thinking of a smaller start than 40, for example, was all I was
Yep,
suggesting.
no, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, and the other thing is the intensification of it, as opposed to two-story and broken up units. Since it's close to the code, that seems like the place to put a more intense 3-4 story development.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe I haven't done as good visuals, because again, we haven't gone that far with conceptual.
Right.
But, I mean, they were kind of the buildings that I had in mind, were sort of on the scale of Artisan Square. So they were, you know, I can't remember off the top of my head, but, you know, 45 to 60 feet wide.
Right.
They'd have, you know, different levels of units. I'd already been talking to Daniel about a height variance, so I was gonna be trying to go for 4 stories if the fire department can handle it and all of that kind of stuff. It wasn't necessarily going to be, although again, we hadn't done the feasibility yet, so that might have come back and said, you really, to afford this thing, you have to do it in one big block and try to make it look as nice as you can. My concept had been more for, like I say, kind of the Artisan Square size buildings, as tall as we could get to maximize density, but having a little bit of space in between so you get more windows in those units. And my big thing is, and a lot of the reading that I've been doing, and over the years of doing community engagement, and I don't know if any of you are aware of Happy City and the research work that they do, having any more, and I'm trying to remember the numbers, I was just reading over the weekend, having any more than, I feel like the number's like 12, or maybe it wasn't 20, it was like 8 or 12. Having more than 8 or 12 units in one single entry is, once you go beyond that, it's detrimental, because it starts to become really anonymous. So if you have an apartment building with 20 or 30 units, and everybody goes in this one entrance, and you go to your mailbox, and then you go up the elevator, and you have a double-loaded corridor. Anyways, there's just research going on that there's so many great things happening that if you can activate spaces between, so that's where my design was coming from.
Sure.
So, I mean, we could do a little study to see how that, you know, design of that and how many developable square feet we would get versus building 3 or 4 larger apartment blocks is, but absolutely my intention was to maximize the density in a great design so that we actually had a good community.
So, I'm getting a little puzzled. In the sketch that, surely you must have seen the sketch as a former member, Don, did, where he showed it was not a building with a, you know, single entry. It would have about, it was kind of 2.5 to 3, I guess it was 3 stories, and it would have about 25 units, quite large. A whole lot of them ground oriented, and no single entry where you had, you know, a bunch of mailboxes or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then he sketched out, and okay, wanted more, well, another sort of similar sized block.
Yeah.
That are the kind of buildings that you're describing, it seems to me. And so I'm not sure that we're that far apart.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I really don't think we are.
No.
Yeah.
It's really about the numbers at this stage of the game, and then how much land do you actually need as a footprint
Yeah.
in order to create that? And so that's kind of where we
Chicken
are.
or the egg.
Yeah, I know, but we gotta get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like we're all want the same thing, there's no question about that. And we all have the design criteria in our minds, and it's gonna be beautiful, and it's gonna be incredible. What we're struggling with is committing that much land on Lot 3. So that's why we pulled back and sort of offered what we did. We could certainly offer it on another piece of property, but, you know, obviously, there's gonna be some complications with that as far as timeline. And I know that you wanna get going, we want you to get going, and that's, you know, without jeopardizing all of lot 3, basically. You know, it's a very complicated piece of property. We've got the RCMP in there, we've got the gas station lot, we've got that other little piece of property in there. It needs some master planning in there. Really needs master
So
planning.
are you all willing to be flexible on lot 3 and consider other parts of it and different sizes, pieces, and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
I would be flexible as long as it doesn't end up getting fragmented. So it's finding ways so that it's into usable chunks, in a sense. So you would have a good chunk, and then there's another usable chunk, so that it's not, you don't have it in silly places, that's all. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think from a master planning standpoint, I think we want to be able to preserve a connection through the site from Trunk Road all the way to the fire station. And I think as a principle as well, residential or mixed-use residential really is appropriate along the edge with the park. And then the more other development, which may be probably mixed-use residential, could go along Miller Road. And so with that kind of structure for that whole land, we want to make sure as much as possible is to try and do sort of a continuous development that gives it some strength and opportunity for who knows what's going to come in the future. And with the development pattern is coming to the surface with the fire station and then the clinic next to it, which is part of the emergency services stuff. And then it does make sort of sense for then the housing component to pick up from there and start to move down. And I think that makes a lot of sense, I think, in our minds in terms of progress and development of that whole site, which gives us all flexibility for the future of what might come along, because we have no idea what that might be. But and it gives an opportunity that possibly even if you do a project in there, and I'm not sure how many units, but the number of units is sort of it's going to have to be nailed down sometime. But you know, I think we're looking at 20 to 40 units, whatever you want to do. We give you the land that would be adequate for that, as long as it's fairly intensified. And I don't think we have a big problem of whether it's 20 or 40, whatever you think you can build and test the market with. And then we go from there. It may be that if you want more of the very same product or similar product, you can continue on if that land isn't gone to some other use or something. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. You know, or jumping to a different type of product over in Lot 1. So I guess it's really, I think we've laid out some opportunities, some key issues for us, for the community, long-term community, big picture. And I guess we need for you to sort of say, what is it do you need, and how can you fit in this?
Morning.
What if Robin and crew were to say, we need what we originally asked for?
I don't believe we asked for that piece of land.
No, what originally asked for, the larger piece. And my understanding was...
What's currently been allocated to us, is that right, David? Yeah. Sorry, I think David was getting into semantics about
Yeah, so,
allocated, asked for.
Yeah.
I think we're all saying the same thing.
I'm talking about what was originally allocated by council last fall.
Right,
So the big piece, not the little piece.
right.
Part of the feasibility work that you were going to be doing presumably was going to be assessing the site in quite a lot more detail
Mhm.
as to its suitability for building. If you went through that feasibility process and identified this chunk of land is especially appropriate for what we want to do as phase one, and it doesn't fragment the lot and respects the concern that David has,
Mhm.
and then you came back to us and said, we can work with this part of that larger part,
Yeah.
and see if that flies.
I want to open it up also to other board members in
Yeah.
case they have any thoughts or things they want to contribute.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
I like where we're going. We're definitely moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
And I think that the idea of, like your idea right now, gives us a lot more flexibility. And that's something I think we could probably move forward with.
Mhm.
And, come back with, okay, we need, X amount of square feet or in order to do what we want to do. And we just would be building it higher rather than building it wider.
So the criteria would be, keep it smaller than the initial chunk,
Right.
keep it dense, and go for the 4-story variance and see where that goes. Keep the rest of the lot intact in that it's not fragmented. What would the other criteria be?
I did have a clarifying question, Dennis. You said something about a connection from Trunk Road to Fire Hall. And I wondered, is that a pedestrian connection, a vehicle connection? Because I think that would be an important.
I think right now it would be both,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because there's public parking being considered in that middle area,
Okay.
and pedestrian as well, so.
From Trunk Road to the lot?
Yeah, that was my question.
Oh,
yeah.
Trunk
You
Road.
said,
Well,
that's what I heard. And I just wanted to clarify.
The final planning would really sort of need to look at, that would, here we are. If it would be something that might go in there. Now, maybe that doesn't make sense. This was what, some kind of spine was what we were seeing right in there, and which allows us then to develop basically all these pods, whoever owns them and whoever develops whatever they want. Now, I think for sure, 100% for sure, we would want pedestrian connection through there. But it may also make some sense to have some vehicular circulation in there as well, to sort of maybe reduce some of the pressure on this intersection. We have to look at all that, but
You want to allow for
certainly
that
this
possibility.
big picture concept of a spine, landscaped, pedestrian, a certain amount of vehicle access is the organizing principle, I think, for this whole lot, all this land.
I just have to, I object to that. I think that coming from Trunk Road, that is an extremely steep approach. And running a significant amount of vehicular traffic through a residential area in front of a health center and to a fire hall, I don't see it as being wise. A pedestrian spine, for sure, but I don't see vehicular.
Well, it's not vehicular that will be shortcutting to there, it would be vehicular that would be
The
access.
first part is really steep.
Yes, it is steep, and that's a big issue, and we're not anywhere near the point of being able to actually look at the details and resolve that, but certainly some kind of spine makes sense, I think.
Robin, last meeting you were also concerned about the timing with respect to your funding potential with different agencies. How is that looking to you now? Like, what do you think the timelines look like?
I'm getting inklings that BC Housing's next intake will be spring of next
Okay.
year. So it really starts to put a clock on things. partners.
Okay.
Because there will be quite a significant amount of work that has to be done for us to be prepared to submit for that.
Okay.
I can check in with our development consultants, kind of working backwards, but yeah, we'd asked at the last council meeting to try and have something resolved by the end of June to go for our next round of funding.
Okay.
So that's kind of our goal, but again, as partners, we want to create it together so we can kind of work through some steps and depending on what it ends up being, but it would be nice if we could all kind of, like I say, light a fire and move towards it quickly, because I
So-
just know right now it's months away, but that starts to dwindle
Well,
down,
yeah,
and then
it's
it's
not
not
very
months
far
away,
because
exactly,
There's not a
so,
lot of time.
yeah.
So I'm really, I guess my question is really,
Process is slow.
how quickly can you get something back to this committee conceptually so that we can actually kind of dig in on it and not hold you up, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it would take us that long. Did anybody else?
We need to have a better sense about this road, because that'll make a big difference, I think, to what gets proposed. We don't want to make a proposal that's suboptimal, and to find out that that was not a hard and fast criteria. Right? Okay. The road,
Well,
that
going
going
through?
through? Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
you know, because you're gonna have to work around that, right?
yeah.
And that could change the expense of it all, depending on where that big granite boulder sits and.
Yeah, okay.
So it would
But
be
I would
better.
still ask that you come back with a proposal.
Okay.
I mean, we've got to have something to work with.
Is a road a deal breaker?
That's
That's my question.
what I don't understand is if you don't want to fracture the land, right? And if you want to make it easy that this actually happens, then you have to come in from the north towards the south. Otherwise, it will be fractured. So then if you want to have certainty, then you build it up against the medical center, you start there.
Yeah.
It's the easiest land to build on.
It is.
It has the biggest volume, it's the easiest for parking. And if that is phase one, that is successful, then you go more to the south. But the land that you had in the steep part, I'm an architect, but I know that it all costs more money to build. It just does, right? You have to glass, you have to level, you have to do all kinds of things. You know, and then you maybe have to preserve a number of trees here and there to, it's part of the mandate too. So I think what you should do now is just make a decision. You know, like if you don't know exactly how much you need, maybe next week you do. Because then you can actually work and allocate time to it, you know, like if you're drifting over the parcel, I wouldn't do that. I would just say if I'm happy I get some land, go for it. You know?
Oh, we'll be happy when we get some land, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's definitely options and there's ones that we've considered, so I think, I don't think it would take very long for us as a board to go away and discuss all the different options that you've presented to us. And, David, do you have anything to add?
We can't do this again.
No, I
Right?
agree.
Like,
I agree.
Once
I agree.
there's a commitment and a partnership,
No, it's not gonna
yeah.
I mean, we're talking partnership and working together, why not work together? I mean, we've got experts here who actually
Yeah,
are looking at it from the
Sure.
whole piece.
yeah,
And they're very good at this stuff. You know,
Yeah.
Fritz has been doing this for
yeah.
20 years and that.
It's longer than that.
Yeah.
Well, in that piece of land, I mean.
Oh, I see,
Fritz-
right.
Yeah, Fritz is,
Is
was
the
a doubt.
board okay if I throw a couple ideas out there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So one of the things that I considered, and I agree in principle with the idea that, you know, develop it in bits and then see how it goes. One of my concerns, and from looking at the feedback from the community lands workshop that happened last year and all that stuff, there was a lot of feedback that along Miller was the great place for mixed use, like
Yeah.
commercial on the ground floor, everything above, we're gonna have the health
Right.
center, all that thing. So
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
That was never really a priority spot for us anyways. And that's why I really liked about our site, and I take all of that feedback about it being more complicated and probably more expensive site work and everything, so I hear that. But what we liked about it is that it was tucked away. So if it's residential and we don't plan to have any, or very little if any, commercial, maybe one little community space if the pro forma allows, but if not, all residential. And one of my, in the cons column, if you will, of the proposed site being immediately next to these, and the idea that this likely won't be developed soon, I don't know, like who knows, maybe you get an RP, but it's gonna be a while, was that, you know, we'll have a big parking lot and a health center and a fire hall, and then we're gonna have residential, and by necessity, several of those units are gonna be at grade facing the parking. Like there's really no way around it if we don't have commercial and a lot of space. So, and I just know if any of you have driven around downtown and you've seen those developments where they have townhouses at the ground floor and then all this stuff above, you almost never see those blinds open because it's really uncomfortable having, and I know there's design solutions and you can work around those things, but that's what I really liked about being tucked back here, is it was, if this is, say, your commercial, mixed use, you know, emergency services and stuff, having this as residential, and it was always completely in agreement, always planned to have a pedestrian connection that would go down either through the park or whatever.
Pedestrian connection would be very busy, I would think.
Yeah, and I don't object to that, that's where, because I mean, the plan that we created last year was, this was commuter parking, because we know that everybody's needed right now, and that people would walk through and connect in with the park, that was an integral part of the plan that we did. So I think that's where we were coming from, or what we liked about the site, and what what we didn't really like about the proposed site, is it really placed us right in the middle of what, once it's built out, is really a commercial space, and then you have these, you know, residential units at grade, and it just didn't sit right with me. So some of the ideas that we thought about were, you know, taking our original site, thinking of it there, and say, would we squish it down and go down here? But then I know you've been discussing, again, probably very long term, there might be future development potential with these other sites. So then maybe that kind of is too much chopping it up, right?
Yeah.
So then we looked at, well, is it possible then to take what kind of was allocated here, and instead of buildings on both sides, just building on one side? So that we would do a strip of, and again, I'd like to be open to the idea that we could do 1 or 2 buildings, depending on how the design worked out. Didn't have to be one big block, but whatever it was, would be pushed against this border, against the park, still access from here, but then if this is developed as a fully, you know, mixed-use commercial and everything, we're still tucked away. If this then gets developed, you know, if there's a road, whatever, through here, we're off to the side. I mean, you know, who knows what's gonna happen in the future? Maybe it all ends up being mixed use and we're back in the same pot, but who knows, right? At least this way, we're, you know, nicely tucked away, and so I think that's kind of where we were coming from, is that was that part of the site being, yeah, nice for residential use, and again, hoping to create that pedestrian feeling, that connection of people coming out of their homes, as opposed to hallways and elevators. Which I appreciate Don's design. That was really very nice of him to actually do a whole bunch of work. Beautiful units. I don't think we get many of those lovely big units built under this pro forma, but it was he did a nice plan, and it proved that it was, you know, feasible. And like you say, I really appreciate that you said we're not that far apart, you know, like we're coming in. So I think if it was something along those lines, if those kinds of ideas are something you would consider?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great, Rob. My only worry is it's really it's really hard not to fragment it because of the crazy shape that we've got and the big RCMP block in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's true that over time, maybe we'll be able to get hold of that. Of course, maybe, but maybe not.
Yeah.
So it's the narrowness of around that corner that's the tricky part. How we sort of figure that out so that it doesn't end up making it impossible to actually access the rest of the lot. But think things out.
Yeah,
Talk to her.
and I think the other part, I mean, just what Maureen actually said, I think is important, because I think the top end of your site is the most economic to develop, right?
Yeah.
It's the best ground in terms of cost effectiveness.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Okay, so if we totally were rethinking everything, you'd be open to us with some kind of idea, maybe?
well, I think we need
was-
something. We need to
Yeah.
have some ideas here that are stronger than what we've got
But you
right
said
now.
about phasing, right? If
Yeah.
you look at
And I'd also like you to think about phasing, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but if you say your first phase
Mhm.
is maybe the easier one,
Yeah.
and then you work your way down to where you want to be,
Yeah.
then you're all inspired to get there.
Yeah.
So Robin, you just, sorry to interrupt, but you just
Yeah.
pointed to the land in front of the health center?
Well, I mean, if we're just kind
Yeah.
of blank slate, if we're just kind of saying, what are all some of my ideas? I
I'm in
mean,
favor of that too.
I don't know that our performance could support a mixed-use commercial, because I think that is what should be in this area, but, I mean, if we're looking at all options, yeah.
I think, I don't know about the mixed, with the commercial.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea.
I don't.
It's not a big seller right
No.
now on
Yeah.
Bowen. I mean, eventually it will be, but I think I want to see it more in the core of the cove.
I agree.
Yeah.
Potentially the corner lot, you know, one time could be, but up there.
Area
maybe not.
1, lot 2, you mean?
No,
Yeah.
You mean here?
that one
Oh,
right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
The gas station.
Old
Yeah.
gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd also talked about the land, the committee had talked about the land in front of the health center being
Yeah.
potential
Yeah.
other
I
uses. spaces.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a longer term
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
around ambulance and
Police potentially, stuff like that.
Okay,
But,
so if
you
we
know.
start to narrow it down,
Yeah.
fire hall's there,
Yeah.
health center and future uses are there, so we're really left with this kind of L shape.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. And, so, you know, we could consider maybe that, but I also feel like that's probably not a good idea.
Probably not.
So it's really
I
you know,
think we're-
something
I
in
think that's
there,
it, right?
or something.
It seems like that's your best amenity package, have that building right next to the park, in my mind.
Mhm.
Being a resident, I would like
Sure.
to be tucked away, you
Yeah,
know, looking out and being right next to a park, walk out my door and walk all over the island.
And
Yeah.
further from Miller Road.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
further from
that's what we liked
Miller
about
Road,
it.
yeah.
And when it was sort of down here, again, not to be a broken record, but that was the idea, it was tucked away, it had a pedestrian connection, this is a little walkable
Yeah.
neighborhood. That didn't allow for vehicle access, so again, we'll
Well,
have to figure out how
vehicle
important that
is just a
Yeah, I think it's a
possibility.
possibility.
And
Yeah.
what, if you start to tuck down into that corner, we sort of need to do a study about how would that land that faces on Trunk Road.
So it's like
Do you want me to
maybe,
draw on it?
no,
Oh.
but Robin, this came from Don's papers,
Yeah.
but if you look at this, if that is the fire hall,
Yeah.
that is the medical center.
Doesn't
Right,
mean the whole
that
thing
one's a
though,
little
Fritz.
special.
Medical center's half of
Oh,
that.
Yeah, it's
Well,
actually less
okay,
than that.
but okay, have
Fair
that,
enough,
yeah, but then you still, you know, if the RCMP would move, right?
Mhm.
And but also to go in there, ambulances, then most of that is actually taken. So then it is there.
That's right. That's where I think it is right there.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what, and then you work your way down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, like, I don't think we're that far off.
We're
It's
not.
like you're
We're
here and I'm
definitely
kind of stretched along there, so it's,
It's the phase.
I mean, we're trying to, I mean, you know, you've heard it, I mean, I don't want to be the broken record either,
Yeah.
but we don't know what's gonna happen to where the RCMP are now and what's gonna happen to the gas station. But what has to happen is there has to be some master planning in case those pieces become part of this.
Mhm.
And so if you were to pull your development down into that bit of a neck, then that
Yeah.
would maybe inhibit what could happen on an overall concept there. And that's all we were really thinking about. You know, we don't have any magic here, we're just
Mhm.
thinking about this the same way you are.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And I guess along similar mindset that us being pushed right up against the back boundary, just like you're doing with
Yeah.
the fire hall, by the
Exactly.
sound, which is great,
Yeah.
leaving that strip at the back for
Right.
future development. We're saying, well, let's take this strip for development
Absolutely.
now,
I mean, it's,
and then you can have the whole rest of it to develop later.
yeah.
So that's kind of what the thinking was, either shrink it that way, so it's that way, or this way, and I get where you're coming from for that. And I don't know, maybe we need to, I don't know if anybody has a connection, because that looks like a really, really big hunk of rock. And so, maybe we need some
Gary
feedback
Anderson.
on, yeah, Gary, okay, and to understand how much of a, because, you know, all I see is dollar signs, right? It's for site prep and digging down and all of that stuff, so I don't know how we go about that, but maybe that can be part of our
Usually that's
analysis
a
and
feature, feature.
Wouldn't that be great? Why don't we build a swimming pool or something,
Yeah.
right there, the rock feature with the fountain going down.
Well, there's gonna be lots of unknown costs here, so this is all gonna be part of your exercise.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So seriously, that was an ask for help to figure out what
It was.
to do with that
I
thing.
know.
Yeah.
So do we have any constructive suggestions?
Well, a lot of this zoning bylaw driven too, because like a lot of excavation is actually a result of zoning bylaws. Because most municipalities drive parking into the ground,
Mhm.
right? So,
Use it for fill.
Well, that was the plan, we knew that there'd be fill needed for
No, but I
parts
think,
of the
I
site.
think what Fritz is saying is something quite different.
well, I'm saying is that if you on-grade parking, and
Mhm.
if you scrape the land, maybe you can park, maybe you can build directly on the rock. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what it
Yeah.
was that it might just be that there's no lower floor or a limited lower floor working
Yeah.
around that
and
problem.
then the 4 stories just sit higher, which means that
Yeah.
your height calculation of 9, 11,
Yeah, switch
14,
that. I agree.
then they have to go to 15.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's difficult to understand any of this without more
Yeah.
comprehensive ideas coming from BIRCH so that
Yeah.
they can be considered more effectively.
But it takes us back to that chicken and egg thing, we're
Yeah.
getting more specific ideas without knowing where they're gonna be. So-
No, but I think we're
But-
getting,
but
we're
in-
we're
we're
getting
getting
the
there.
answer.
Yeah.
Starting
We're
that.
getting
I
into
think
this,
we've, I
yeah.
think we've honed in.
But, and I think going back and forth, Like,
Mhm.
you know,
For
don't sort of, okay, work for a bunch of weeks and then
No,
throw something on the table.
no,
Instead,
absolutely not.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
No, and I think we should go there, the
Yeah,
group
sure.
of us.
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
And really look at this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
There's also a thought that if you have a building and your parking is beside it, as the years go by, the parking lot becomes valuable because you can build more on it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right, but for instance, if you take these single buildings that sit in the middle of the big lot, like the fire hall or market center, and you have all these slivers around you can't do anything with it. Right, so if you leave a piece of, if you put your parking actually in a block, that later, because maybe later, it's fine, somebody's most willing to pay for below grade parking.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you just move it up,
Yeah.
but you don't lose your opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it sounds like that's an agreement that we'll come up with, like the health center, just big enough for our buildings, and that parking
Yeah.
will be part of the lease negotiations and cost sharing and all of that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
a separate discussion.
Can I ask a council, sorry, did I see a hand up? Oh, good, sorry, I thought I was talking over some. Can I ask a council process question? While we're working on this,
Yeah.
is council going to vote to repeal the commitment to that piece of land? Or is the idea to wait until there's another proposal and then do
We do both
together?
at the same time, yeah.
Okay.
With Plan B. I think that's really progressive. I think you guys gotta go away and say, okay, how many units do we actually wanna build? And, you know, you can take it part of it from the survey and that sort of thing. This needs analysis, housing needs analysis. I think I have no idea how long that'll take to get that back. What would you think, Maureen?
Next year, this time.
Oh, really?
It's a long ways off, yeah.
So, we're not gonna have that to work on. But think about densification, big time. Think about what you can do to densify that piece of property, because we really, really wanna densify it. So if you're,
Like, what does that mean from you guys? Because I think you and I have
it
different
means
ideas
getting the
of what
most
that
people on the smallest piece of property.
No, but what number?
What number, I would, that's up to
means.
you.
So,
If you wanna put 40 have 40 units in there,
yeah.
that's great, but think that they're gonna be probably on, 2 or 3 floors or something like that.
Like Artisan, I mean, your concept is not that
It's-
far away. We
Yeah.
looked at those sketches that Don did, and even
Yeah.
the elevations, the numbers were there
Yeah.
on that small site, and they were various levels of entry. I mean, it was conceptually, and the only reason that Don really did those drawings was just to prove to ourselves on the
Mhm.
committee here that it would actually, the density would actually fit into that envelope. That's all we were trying to prove.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And without looking like a big apartment block.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just, I think there's a balance between density and livability. And when I was thinking about this earlier on
Yeah.
today, I was thinking, what are we going for, the sardine model of densification? And I don't think we are. I
No,
mean, I lived in one of those tenements with a close and
Mhm.
10 families up. Those places are not livable homes.
Mhm.
And we would not want people on Bowen Island to
No.
have
No.
to live in those kinds of places.
And,
Yeah.
and if I could just add to that, Maureen, I totally agree with that. And I think the other thing that, when I think about densification of a site like that, what that does is create open space.
Yeah.
That's the other most valuable part of what densification creates.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
so what do you think?
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm still, and it might just be me, I'll go away and I think it's crunching numbers and presenting those, because I think we probably are talking about the same thing, just different visuals of how to achieve it. But I mean, there's no way we're ever gonna max out the FSR, just so you guys know that. I don't know if you can't max out the FSR
No.
on this site. The limiting factors are height, which we can try to get a variance, and then parking, but that's kind of off the table for us, so
Yeah.
we won't worry about that. I'm happy to look at it, and I think it sounds like we need to crunch numbers then and come back with actual, like density rates and stuff, so I don't know if you
And I
have
realize you're
numbers
pulling a
in
lot of
mind.
stuff just out of the air too,
Yeah,
because
so if you guys have numbers in
without
mind.
the ability to go forward, and
Yeah,
the certainty there, it's hard to know exactly where you're gonna be. And same with BC Housing or whoever you're working with, Canada, CBC. It's, they want something very concrete. So the faster we can say, okay, just do it.
Yeah, again,
Better
chicken and
off.
egg thing, right? I've got funding to do the feasibility study to crunch all the numbers and get it all ready for applications, but without an actual site, so I get it. So we're just gonna have to inch our way forward, shuffle, chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken, egg.
But I think
And
just
we'll
even, yeah,
see
just
what we
even
can
based
get.
on that survey that you put out, I mean, if you wanted to take that as, you know, Veritas as the situation we're in right now,
Mhm.
you could tailor the buildings to that.
Yeah, well, that was one of the goals of the survey, so I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like there's 36 people in need of, like, actively right now in need.
What kind of housing, are you seeing
It
that
was
coming
quite a
back?
mix, but two-bedroom was the
Oh,
biggest,
really?
but not by a long, but just, and we'll, certainly the survey closes on Thursday, and
Yeah,
we'll publish it as soon as we can. I don't know how many paper copies we've received, so we'd have to data process
Yeah.
those, but I think the majority will be online. And so as soon as we crunch those numbers, we'll release those for sure. But it was definitely a mix of demand, but the two-bedroom was out in front. And then the other factor being, I wanna make sure we don't overlap with other things that are going on as well. Like there are other developments happening, so
Right.
I don't wanna build a whole bunch of
Yeah.
one-bedrooms when somebody else is gonna build 31 bedrooms next year and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's also making sure of those
Well,
things.
all the more reason to get this thing going, like honest to God.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
trying to stand in the way here,
Get
we're
the
trying
first
to
shovel in the
encourage you
ground.
to move this along as quickly as you can.
Well, thank you.
When does this committee meet next?
Anytime you want us to use.
Yeah, we're very flexible, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should all meet together more often.
Well, that's true, Jack, there's no question about that, that's the way things happen.
Yeah.
You know, just people throwing stuff out there and see what.
So would we like to actually set a goal of like meeting again in 2 weeks or something, or
We can
I
certainly
don't
do
know
that.
when the next,
How
if we
long
wanna
do you-
aim for
How
before
long
or
do you need to
after.
have something back to us, because that's really what we do.
More importantly, I'm going on vacation on May 15th. So
Delegate, delegate.
let's meet before May 15th.
Sure.
How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
And I can meet
No,
whatever
Do you have some,
deadline we have.
say?
No, it was not timeline, it's okay.
Okay.
What about May 14th?
Do you guys, what day is it? I can't remember. Monday. Do you guys usually meet Mondays, or you meet whenever you can all?
Whenever we can get
Yeah,
together.
whenever we can.
Monday, the 13th is a council meeting, strategic plan session. We're kind of up to our eyeballs already on the 13th.
Right, so there's no chance of it getting on the agenda, is what you're getting at?
No.
Or you're busy
The
that night?
committee's
so you
No,
can't
that's,
do it.
that's not the committee, that's council.
I know, yeah, so you're saying that night's out.
I
Yep.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to do the site visit? Were you talking about doing a site visit?
Does anybody think that would be beneficial? It would be nice,
Yes.
but I'm not, yeah, is that,
I'm happy to do it.
yeah?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
What about
Put that
doing
in
it
there,
on
so.
the 14th?
The day after,
Yeah.
next Tuesday?
Yeah.
If it,
14th,
yeah,
we've got the community grants committee in this room,
When?
got something this
6:30 to 8:30.
okay.
Yeah, that's it.
And are you, is there overlap? Are you on that committee? No?
It's
Which
just
committee is
space.
it?
Community
What was it,
Space.
sorry?
Grants committee?
Oh,
Yeah, it's
community
just-
grants, no, I'm off that.
Okay.
It's just space.
It's a space,
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
reason
yeah.
she's supposed to,
So,
otherwise nobody hears on that.
But if we're talking about a site meeting,
Oh, sure.
site visit, and we can talk about stuff there, I know it's, I don't know, it's not like
It just,
on record.
you finally you gotta put some dates down somewhere, otherwise it just gets pushed.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
So site
just-
visit with a casual conversation on the,
I think
Or
what's
did you
more
get back
important
grade?
is the concepts. I
Okay.
really do. That's what's gonna tie us down
That's
here.
the key thing.
Yeah,
We need to be able to come to a point where the committee can make a recommendation to council on how much land you need. That's gotta be where we try to get to here,
yeah, yeah.
so.
So do we want to try and do that before the council meeting on the 13th then?
if you can do that.
I think it's up to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
can you do
Good.
Thursday the night? Is
Sooner
that
the
too
better.
early?
I can do Thursday the night.
Yeah, I
Sure.
can do that.
No, I'm away, but go ahead, because of how
Okay.
tight it is.
If that works for people, yeah?
Certainly works for me.
I'm away
Wednesday
too,
the
but
8th.
I'm-
All right.
Oh, yeah, you're
I'm
away,
not
you're
either.
away for a couple weeks, yeah, okay. Okay, done.
Awesome.
Is this up here at the same time, or
Are you going to have a site visit first?
a site visit, or?
Do people want to do that, or do we
I
I think we just go straight to.
let's just meet? Okay,
think a site visit would be much more appropriate if we've got something in hand.
Something we can sink our teeth in, we can flag it, and just say,
Exactly.
okay, here's this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner.
Yeah,
if we can come up with some kind of.
so are people available then, could we meet at 6:30 on site and then aim to be here at 7:30, say, or something for a meeting? Like, I don't know, does that work for people?
Yeah, no, we could do that. We could have the site visit for a half an hour before we came out here.
Yeah,
And that's a good way to tie it all together.
yeah, and I'll do my best to send something out ahead of time then, so you've had time to look at, I'll do my best. I won't promise,
Okay.
but I'll do my best to get something out ahead of time, so we've had
Yeah,
time to
that would be
digest.
really helpful, actually.
Yeah,
And have the discussion about lot one also,
okay.
you know, with the board and, you know, because that, we'll make that available somehow. Right, Daniel?
The problem would be solved, you just need to give the whole thing over to nonprofit housing of area
Yeah.
1 of lot 1, and
Yeah,
then it's all done, you can just leave us to design it. Dead silence.
Good idea.
Okay, so it sounds like tonight it is.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, as far as the lot size on lot one, I mean, you asked about that, I think it would probably be an acre and a half or something like that.
Right, so, and that's in line with the half
Yeah.
hectare that was the previous commitment,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any further comments from the board, or?
I'm optimistic.
Good,
Yeah, it
good.
feels like we're
Yeah, it feels like we're working together.
close. Yeah, we're on the same page and
Yeah,
have similar ideas, and
yeah.
I'm excited.
Well, believe me, we all want it to happen, there's no question about that.
I feel
It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, we have other constraints that we have to deal with also, so.
Could I just,
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
could I just ask a question about parking? I've been nudged from the audience, guess who? The question is, if the idea is to use the BIM property
Mm.
for parking, is that the intent for this project?
That was
Sorry,
my
what?
understanding, that
To use-
our lot would be squished to just what we need for the buildings, and
Yeah,
then
that's-
That
municipally
was the original
owned property
document.
Yeah,
would be leased
That's what we
somehow
did.
and cost shared to create
Yeah.
surface parking for our project.
Okay.
yeah.
And then
Cost share is probably what
the
happens.
second part of that question did have to do with money, that would there be money required, payment in lieu for access to the parking?
Well, I think my understanding would be, if it was on our site, we would have to pay to build the parking. So if
Correct.
it's on your site, we would be contributing, I'm not
Yes.
gonna commit to what it is, but obviously we'd be committing something to that, and then whether there'd be an ongoing cost or
Be a
not,
shared
I
cost.
don't know. But cost sharing is absolutely
Yeah.
on the table in whatever form to be negotiated.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Allison.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, really appreciate it.
That's great. Thanks for
I think
coming.
it's
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
really positive.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
We will get there. Sooner the better.
The sooner the better.
Thanks, dude.
No, they have to. You're the chair. Yeah. You're our partner in this.
But I heard that you
That's right, I was pushing for the meetings.
Yeah, I don't really
When
have
you lose
general
your back?
ideas for places.
So you've been
lower
talking-
frequency.
Yeah.
You've been talking to the
The committee will take a 5-minute break. Yeah, sure.
With
Then we'll come back for the close.
confines of very schedule, kind of managing those sort of
Any other business?
that model.
We're done?
Thank you. You too.
Nice seeing you again.
It's been my personal opinion, like I know that they're.
Thanks, Jack.
We'll get there. Certainly has potential for it.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Having the,
No,
obviously impacts like how many trips are like to be on the service periods.
I bet there's some,
Oh, no, but as a general idea,
no. We're in the same direction.
there's lots of
Good
good
things
places
for
that are more
Bowen.
that have very good efficiencies. Eastern
First step.
where you have
You have seen
like
like
and primarily farm.
Even lower density.
So yeah, no, it's interesting stuff that, yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Like I come very much. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Nice. Nice to support.
My name's Zach.
Also then.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm sure all of the people in my area.
You know, it's all, you know, it's all right in the park. The whole parcel is good. Yeah, I think you just have to start somewhere. Yeah. I think of all just define the partial size. And then you can always change it. Got some view, right?
Exactly.
I worry about how narrow that net is.
I know, I'm very concerned about that. It could be a real impediment to the future if we were able to tie that stuff together. So you're still in, she seems to want to draw down.
Her sketch,
into
her
that
sketch is that.
Yeah, because it is attractive.
Yeah, it is.
So like, I think if the first part, one before, and then you have phase two.
Yes,
So are we on
Camera's still on, so that we're recording and
And what I would do is just to make sure that the first build.
It had something like this, like it had like.
Then
Yeah,
you-
yeah.
down here,
but then
and it had
the
building
first
here, and
question
like
that's gonna come up is,
So she's gonna
are
come
they gonna
back
buy
and
the
say,
second phase?
maybe, right, I can do these ones.
Oh,
Because the obligation in this
Like, that's what I
is to
think.
give them. a
Yeah.
Right, so her previous one had two
So
rows of
the-
buildings.
Yeah.
in
The
this-
obligation would be
in this
fulfilled
layout.
by this first phase.
And it allows,
So
it
then
allows
the
for
idea
potential
of
phasing
looking
of that
at the
area
lot
as well.
Was that
Like, this is,
drawing,
so when we
give them another.
like,
so
we said
everything
everything
always
26.
changes.
Yeah,
24 meters wide, what we're gonna offer.
I know.
Yeah,
That's
so
right,
we're
that's
gonna
why
choose-
we're having
these.
these.
I'm saying, here's what I do, is
Yeah.
here's two drawings that you make, you know,
Yeah.
based on.
In line or going across from each other.
Yeah.
So this one, you know, you got,
Then
it's sort of,
maybe they have to build them a bit
still,
different.
you've got all this to
Yeah,
the
that's
left.
Yeah.
Here, you've got.
That's really it.
It goes off on this end.
No,
So
we
it's,
don't want to
it's
commit
sort
too
of,
far.
which is better for them, which is better for us, hard to know.
Yeah,
Therefore,
like in terms of
you
Frank,
clear
you
the
know,
next
if
block,
this
what
was
gets
here
blocked, right?
instead, like, she
Now,
said,
it's much
yeah, we'll do
easier
this
to
and
get
this.
somebody in the next block.
Sure. Yeah,
They're-
that's right.
I don't know, I mean, these guys have the expertise to sort of look at this and visualize things way better than I do, to sort of get a sense of what are your options in terms of being able to present this.
Not good practice.
But I think it's like doing this,
Yeah.
if the RCMP doesn't move, this is more fragmented.
Yeah, then,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right,
that's
like-
that's true. If the RCMP doesn't move, then you've kind of.
Right, and because
This is an island.
This is nice, but it's
Yeah.
like it's out of our control,
It's
to
out
make
of our
sense,
control,
right?
it
Like,
is. Yeah.
whereas if it, like if it's like this with this one below, then at least
Yeah.
it leaves, like it leaves you
Room to move.
a
Yeah.
chunk
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
If nothing happens here, and
Yeah.
if this is still free, then it gives,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
So
what's
it's-
less
it's-
fragmented?
So we're still on camera, guys? Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of.
You've got all these effects. Have you got this stuff?
Yeah, I have the stack from Don, it's a big stack, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But you know, also a lot of unfinished ideas in it, so.
Yeah.
Prince is gradually gonna join all our committees. and make
Yes.
us like-
I was actually just testing, I just wanted to know
Yeah.
how steps.
Yeah.
If she's only slowing down in our committee.
Where's Gary?
But you know, if you think about it, right, now where on earth do you have, like most development, you don't even have the choice to actually set the size of your own parcel.
No,
That's
that's
where
it never happens.
So now you can,
Success is happening.
now you can say, well, this is it, you make your acre,
So,
1 acre in the most logical shape, you know, it works the best for you.
Yeah.
Do something nice in it, and have it ready for Thursday. Doesn't mean you start building on Friday, you know? So,
motion to adjourn? Is that what we need?
We need to move to a close.
We're gonna move to the close and then we'll, so I don't think we need to answer for that. Okay, so, was there any other business, from the minutes? Anybody have any other discussion you wanna have? No, okay, good. New business, okay, move to a closed meeting, the Mayor Standing Committee on Community Lands, move to a closed meeting pursuant to section 91 D and K of the Community Charter. Meetings that may and or must be closed to the public, and 90-1 is part of a council meeting that will be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to one or two or more of the following: the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And K, negotiations or related discussions respecting that proposed provision of municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to already exist in the municipality for health and public. With that, somebody want to second it? Thank you very much, Dennis. And all in favor? Thank you. Okay, we're moving to a close, which will adjourn this meeting. And we stab. Yeah, so, yeah, that's it.